Isaiah caught Charles giving a big thumbs up out of the corner of his eye, and his brows lifted slightly. Turns out he was right all along. Charles was just the type who loved watching drama, especially when it was his own. The live chat was losing it with laughter. I've never seen someone actually lean in for a slap before. Strangely satisfying, though. What's going on? Turns out Charles really was invited by Gabriel himself. Gabriel admitted it. What else is there to question? Could Gabriel have invited Charles just because he's got that classic watch the drama energy we all love? If Gabriel saw this comment, he'd probably hit the like button. There was some truth to that, but it wasn't the whole story. The chat heated up even more. What blows my mind is why every guest on this show ends up bickering. When did the entertainment world get so honest? Maybe it's not that the industry's become more honest. More like our guests just don't play games. That comment got flooded with likes in seconds. Yeah, they're into it, watching guests go full-on trash talk. Much better than all that backstabbing behind closed doors, right? Keep it going. Don't stop the drama. The fans were all silently hoping for more chaos. And then suddenly Gabriel turned to look at Charles on screen. Charles gave Gabriel a puzzled look, wondering if he'd imagined it. There was something barely noticeable in Gabriel's eyes, like a flicker of quiet hurt. Then Gabriel let out a sigh so dramatic it could have powered a small city. I'm crushed. I stood up for you, and you just ignored me? Charles froze. Then his eyes lit up with amusement. He shot Gabriel a big thumbs up, grinning as he said, Gabriel, you're awesome. Behind the scenes, he was already rolling his eyes. Without Gabriel's own seal of approval, I can't go full boss mode on my second brother. Funny how Gabriel forgot. This whole mess wouldn't exist if he hadn't invited Caleb in the first place. Gabriel heard every word. Edwin couldn't hold back. He smirked, gave Charles a quick nod of approval, then slowly turned his attention back to Caleb's priceless expression. Caleb was already dark as coal. He hadn't seen Gabriel stepping in to defend Charles coming out of nowhere. Kicking yourself in the face never feels good. But then he remembered that day when Mason came to him, tearful and desperate. That gave him a second wind. Caught Edwin's smug glance. Caleb glared up at him, teeth clenched. What are you so proud of? Just because your family's loaded? Charles had been itching to reply the whole time. Edwin and Gabriel had stopped him before. Now, hearing Caleb's jab, he didn't hesitate. Caleb, no need to get defensive. You've got a top-tier agent too, haven't you? He even threw in a polite little smile for good measure. No surprise. Caleb turned an even deeper shade of black, his chest rising and falling with barely controlled rage. Charles couldn't help but mentally high-five himself. See, I'm so polite. And I even called him bro. Gabriel nearly snorted out loud. Edwin didn't even try to hide it. He burst out laughing. So what was he even stressing about earlier? Charles isn't as soft as he looks. Looking at the other guests now, Owen really wanted to laugh, but Harper next to him was gripping his hand tight, like she was reminding him about the camera. Asher's mood had clearly lifted. He even took off his cap and tilted his head back, watching the scene with amusement. When he heard Charles's remark, a smug smile tugged at his lips. Maverick, still hesitant about joining in, didn't laugh outright, but he made no move to get involved either. His eyes stayed fixed on the unfolding moment. The livestream audience had zero filters. Charles finally figured it out. Your mouth's even more sarcastic than Asher's. Haven't you noticed? I've been thinking Charles is a white-collar villain all along. New travel together was wild, but this is next level. Even our royal gossip king's getting roasted. Don't tell me we didn't see it coming. Probably Charles didn't either. Some fans were curious. So, why's Caleb targeting Charles? Charles is just a rookie. How could he piss anyone off? Then someone chimed in. What if Caleb isn't actually after Charles at all? But Edwin? Yeah, I watched it closely. Edwin's expression when he got in the car was very weird. Mentioning Edwin sparked even more confusion. They loved celebrity drama, but there was almost nothing on Edwin. They'd never heard of him having any beef in the industry. When exactly did Caleb start clashing with him? Seeing that, fans immediately turned to Edwin's supporters. Hey, fans, say something. Come here. One of you explain this. Edwin's fans looked at one another, all reading the same confusion in each other's eyes. What are we supposed to do about it? They don't know anything either. Everyone in the industry knows Edwin's been a total mystery for years. fans, let alone paparazzi, rarely get a single scoop. If even the paparazzi are clueless, how could fans possibly know anything? The live chat fell silent for a beat. Inside the bus, only distant sounds from outside filtered in, the quiet so thick it felt heavy. Then Isabella's voice cut through the stillness from outside the window. "Hey, could someone help me out here?" Henry was the first to turn. He glanced at Isabella beyond the glass, a flicker of regret in his eyes. "Looks like this whole thing's over." Caleb exhaled sharply. "I'm not wasting my breath arguing with you. You'll pay for what you owe, one way or another." He turned his back on them and walked straight toward the rear of the bus. Edwin snorted at that but said nothing more. Instead, he stepped out to help Isabella with her luggage. The live stream audience wasn't happy. "That's it, Caleb? You're just leaving like that?" "Wait. What do you mean, owe someone?" "Caleb, don't leave us hanging. Seriously, is the production team chasing ratings too hard? Why isn't anything blowing up? I just realized this chat's full of people who live for drama. And yeah, I'm one of them. So is there more to this? What about Charles, the king of gossip?" The audience all turned their gazes toward Charles. Charles hadn't expected Caleb to let it go so easily. He blinked, then glanced sideways at Caleb's back, unable to keep the thought from bubbling up. Caleb just let it go. "I figured he'd blow the whole thing wide open. Like, spill everything about my older brother and Mason." Edwin had just helped Isabella haul her suitcase up when he caught that comment. He shot Charles a sharp look. "You really don't care how far this could blow up, do you?" Then came Charles's next words. "But I'm starting to think it won't be long now." Caleb seems like a clueless type. Probably already got himself wrapped around Mason's little finger. "I bet he only came on this show because Mason pushed him to. Maybe he's trying to get back at me for Mason, but the thing Mason didn't count on. My older brother's here too, this episode." At that thought, Charles's lips curled into a slow, wicked grin. He lifted his eyes toward the camera mounted up front. "So now who's really got something to worry about? One's an ex with dirt on him. The other's a current guy who's been played for a fool. If they both start sharing info right in front of the camera..." Charles couldn't help but grin wide. "And lucky for us, this episode's filmed out on the grasslands. If Mason loses contact with Caleb, well, that'll be a real show." Edwin's expression shifted at that. Why didn't I think of that earlier? Caleb might always give Edwin that icy glare, but he wasn't reckless. Gabriel had just said the flight guest spot was actually arranged by Caleb's agent. Caleb's standing in the industry isn't exactly huge. This show wouldn't even affect his career one way or another. Why did he have to be so dead set on joining this show? Once everything clicked, it made sense why Caleb had gone out of his way to sabotage Charles the moment they got in the car. Caleb was being manipulated, and who that someone was? The answer was staring right at them. Edwin slid into the seat beside Henry, his eyes cold as ice. After learning the truth about Mason's deception, Edwin was heartbroken and betrayed. But even so, he'd never once thought about getting back at him after their breakup. Mason had been someone he genuinely cared for. Even if things had gone to hell between them, Edwin still truly wished Mason would find happiness after they split. But clearly, Mason didn't feel the same way. If Caleb's revenge had been aimed at him personally, Edwin wouldn't have blown up like this. But Mason and Caleb didn't know Edwin was even on the show. This whole thing wasn't about him. It was all for Charles. They're trying to mess with his little brother right under his nose? Are you kidding me? The anger in Edwin's expression finally cracked through. Even Henry noticed something was off, glancing at him repeatedly. Just now, wasn't Charles the one who came out on top? He'd only gone to move a suitcase. What suddenly got him so worked up? Henry glanced back at Charles, who was already slipping on his SpongeBob sleep mask and settling in for the night. Then he turned again and saw Edwin pulling out his phone, typing a message. Even though he didn't know what was going on yet, Henry could already smell the drama. Sure enough, after sending the message, Edwin stood up abruptly and headed straight for the production team below. Henry pulled out his phone and logged into his side account, finally posting a tweet that wasn't about ranting at coworkers. Gosher. So which poor soul is going to be the one to suffer? Kinda excited. Honestly, Edwin didn't take long before he came back onto the bus, and right after, the production team climbed aboard to brief everyone on their itinerary. Since their first stop was far away, they wouldn't be arriving until evening, so guests were free to rest on the bus. Charles had been waiting for that exact moment. As soon as he heard it, he yanked down his eye mask, slumped his seat back, and stretched out with a sigh, ready to catch up on sleep. He figured he'd wake up just in time to reach their destination smoothly. But when he finally opened his eyes, the sky outside was pitch black, and the car was still moving. A tiny blanket had somehow appeared over him. He stared at it for a moment before turning to look around the cabin. Only one soft amber lamp remained lit, and the bus was quiet, most of the guests clearly asleep. Maybe his movement had been a little too sudden. Gabriel slowly opened one eye and murmured, "Awake." Charles nodded, keeping his voice low. "Did I wake you?" Gabriel shook his head. "I'm not used to sleeping on the move," he said, glancing at the time before adding softly, "We've got about an hour left. You can nap again if you want." Charles nodded once more, then pointed at the blanket covering him. "You covered me?" Gabriel gave a small nod. Charles's eyes crinkled into a smile. "Thanks." Gabriel waited quietly for a few seconds, then let out a soft laugh. For once, he didn't mentally roll his eyes at himself. He glanced over at Charles again. The grassland had a big temperature swing between day and night, and without the AC on, there was a faint chill in the air. When Charles sneezed softly in his sleep, Edwin turned around from the front seat right away. Gabriel reached into his suitcase and pulled out a blanket, draping it gently over Charles's body. The pure white blanket bore a lazy cat, just like Charles himself. Half his body curled up tight, an eye mask covering part of his forehead, a single strand of hair dangling over his eyes, revealing half of a pale, smooth face. Feeling Gabriel's gaze, Charles tilted his chin up slightly. The warm, dim light caught in his eyes like tiny sparks, and after a long pause, he blinked. Those beautiful eyes filled with question, as if silently asking, "What?" For a moment, the quiet stretched on forever. It took several seconds before Gabriel finally looked away and shook his head. Then came Charles's sarcastic remark. "Weird, Gabriel. Men's hearts are a mystery." Gabriel's lips curled into a small smile. An hour later, the bus pulled up in total darkness across the grasslands. Hearing the director call for everyone to get off, the group stirred awake one by one. Charles glanced out at the pitch-black night and couldn't help but ask, "So, are we staying in yurts or just here to herd sheep?" Asher shot back, "If I didn't know this was a show, I'd be out the door already." "Spit it out," Henry said as he stepped down first. "Seriously, no budget left, director? Why don't you ask Gabriel instead?" Gabriel crossed his arms. "I paid enough." Charles nodded vigorously. "Gabriel's the kind who always overpays. Guess I'll take that as a compliment." The producer laughed. "Come on, everyone. Hurry up and get down." Once they all stepped off the bus, the crew finally switched on the lights. The small patch of grass lit up in an instant. Four tents formed a circle, with a large carpet laid out in the center. Alongside fruits and vegetables, there was something wrapped in aluminum foil, its size and shape oddly reminiscent of a whole roasted lamb. A gust of wind swept through, carrying the sharp aroma of cumin and chili straight into the guests' noses. Everyone instinctively swallowed hard. "So this is a camping episode?" Owen asked, his voice tinged with excitement. The director nodded. "That's right, our theme this round is getting close to nature. We've already set up the tents for you, and since you've all had a long journey, we've also prepared a whole roasted lamb. As for everything else, that's on you to handle." Hearing about the roast lamb, everyone lit up. "Then what are we waiting for? Let's sort out the tents first. Once that's done, I'll get cooking," Owen said with a grin. "If there are 4 tents, that means 2 of them will have 3 people sharing." Harper said, "I'll take Isabella." With only the 2 women present, no one objected. Then it was the guys' turn to pick their tents. Edwin spoke up first. "I'll take Charles. I can squeeze in another person." Gabriel said, "I'll join you too." Asher, who had no love for Maverick and disliked Caleb even more, turned to Henry. "Me and you." Henry suddenly remembered his character role and smiled. "I'm good either way." Asher hated that fake smile. He shot back without hesitation. "Then I'll be with." Henry quickly stepped in, out of camera range, his expression shifting instantly. Lowering his voice, he said, "You'd survive a few quiet words, wouldn't you?" Asher arched an eyebrow. Maybe it was the open sky, but he felt unusually light. He grinned back. "Same to you. Don't play pretend." Owen, Caleb, and Maverick would be sharing the last tent. Charles peeked inside first. The tents were surprisingly spacious. 3 people could easily fit, let alone 6. He tossed his suitcase down and headed out to wait for the whole roasted lamb. Owen was already prepping the ingredients, with Henry helping by his side. Suddenly, Owen said to him, "Henry, mind running back and fetching 2 buckets of water? I just checked with production. There's a tap over by that lighted building." Henry nodded and grabbed the empty buckets, ready to go. Then Maverick called out, "Hey Henry, can I come with you?" Charles's eyes lit up instantly. No way, Maverick's actually this bold. Just got turned down by Asher this afternoon, and now he's already hitting on Henry again. Brave guy, going after Henry of all people. Good luck with that. Just as he was thinking that, Maverick reached out and took one of the buckets from Henry's hand. The bucket handle was long enough, but Maverick's hand went straight for Henry's like it had a mind of its own. Charles couldn't help letting out a sharp, startled gasp. "Maverick, what the hell are you doing?" Right as Maverick's fingers were about to brush Henry's, Henry suddenly let go. The metal bucket clanged hard against the stones, drawing everyone's attention. Owen looked up, puzzled. "What's going on?" Henry kept smiling, but gave Maverick a long, pointed look. Then turned to Charles and said, "Charles, you coming with me?" Charles quickly snapped out of his gawking and nodded, then walked over, bending down to pick up the bucket. Charles followed Henry as they walked off, completely ignoring Maverick behind them. Maverick's expression darkened. He was about to say something when a soft voice cut in. "Looks like a river monster. Dreams big. Ha! Help! I can't take it anymore." Henry's got such a sharp tongue. So how the hell did Maverick even manage to single-handedly take down 2 of our show's biggest chatterboxes in just one afternoon? Only to get absolutely roasted by both of them? This is too funny. "What are you laughing at?" Henry's voice suddenly cut in, quiet and cool, right beside Charles. Charles quickly wiped the grin off his face and didn't hesitate. "Oh, just thinking about how I'm gonna eat that whole roasted lamb later." Henry gave him a faint look, his lips still curled in that familiar half-smile. "Really?" Charles met his gaze straight on. "Absolutely. I wasn't laughing at you for ragging on Maverick. Dead serious." Henry shifted his gaze away without saying another word. They were back from fetching water in no time. The production team had thought ahead. There was even a barbecue grill already set up for them. Owen chopped the veggies while Harper stood right next to him, threading everything onto skewers. The others hovered around helping, but somehow Owen and Harper had this invisible bubble around them. No one could get close. Charles's eyes darted between the two, his grin wide and bright. "Our show's officially gone from travel vlog to romance drama. Those pink bubbles are seriously leaking out." Edwin waved Charles over. "Hey Charles, come here." Charles stepped right up, thinking he'd be asked to help. But as soon as he got close, Edwin leaned in and whispered, "Can your phone connect to the internet now?" What's up with the second brother asking that? Charles was puzzled, but he pulled out his phone and opened WeChat anyway. Then the brothers watched the WeChat refresh screen spinning endlessly, until a red alert finally popped up. Charles's eyes lit up in an instant. Turns out the connection was down after all. So that's why second brother. Charles shot a quick glance up, and there it was, Edwin giving Caleb a sharp, challenge-filled nod. Caleb didn't have a clue what Edwin was up to, but his face dropped immediately. Charles bit down hard on his lip, barely holding back a laugh. "Oh no, Mason, you're so done." Before long, everything was ready. The whole lamb had been carved by Owen and placed in the center. Everyone settled down on the ground. "Come on, sit down. Let's eat our lamb and grill at the same time." Harper waved them all to their spots. Charles didn't go straight for a seat. Instead, he waited until Caleb had sat down, then picked a spot directly across from him. Edwin took the seat right beside Charles. On the other side of Charles was Gabriel. Henry noticed the seating arrangement right away and smoothly slid into the spot just ahead and to Caleb's right. Seeing that everyone was ready to eat, the production crew quickly brought out drinks and booze. Charles took a sip of soda, chewed a bite of lamb, and his eyes sparkled. Delicious! The others picked up their forks and started eating. For a moment, the atmosphere felt oddly peaceful. Suddenly, the director couldn't help but mutter to the producer beside him, "Wouldn't it be nice if they stayed like this forever?" The producer nodded with a smile. Just as he was about to speak, suddenly Edwin's voice crackled through the monitor. "Caleb, did you even hate me because of Mason?" "Wait, what? What Mason? Mason what?" They didn't even invite this guest to the show, did they? Only Charles, who knew the truth, was practically vibrating with excitement. "Here it comes. My big brother's about to go full throttle. By this point, the drinks were flowing and the mood was electric. Even Asher, who'd been in a sour mood all afternoon, cracked a genuine grin and clinked his glass with Owen's. The live chat was buzzing with pure good vibes, just as the online audience was sighing with envy, buzzing with excitement, and flooding the chat with admiration. Out of nowhere came Edwin's unexpected remark. The chat froze for a heartbeat. On set, the room went utterly silent. Every guest paused mid-motion, stunned. Henry thought, finally, and lowered his eyes slightly, hiding a smirk in the shadows of his lashes. Owen and Harper exchanged a slow glance. Both saw surprise mirrored in the other's eyes. What on earth is going on? Asher blinked, confused. He glanced at Edwin, then flicked his gaze to Caleb, still clueless, before turning to Charles and catching the unmistakable spark of excitement on his face. Clicked instantly, a faint raise of his brows, a slow upward curl at the corner of his mouth. Only Isabella and Maverick remained completely in the dark. Both bewildered but too polite to ask outright, so they simply turned searching looks toward Edwin, the one who'd said it. Charles, already in on the secret, lifted his eyes straight to Caleb across the room, his excitement written plainly across his face. "It's your turn now, Caleb." Charles's gleam was impossible to miss. Viewers in the live stream chat instantly caught on Charles's look. "There's definitely a juicy rumor here. Once I saw that look, I knew it was coming. The gossip is here, so this one's tied to Edwin too? I heard Mason's name. Wasn't he the actor who worked with Edwin before?" Edwin's fans suddenly went cold. No way. The audience's instincts were sharp. They pressed hard. "So you fans know something?" Edwin's fans shook their heads fast. "Maybe we only just remembered Mason after Edwin mentioned him?" The crowd wanted more. "So what's actually going on here?" "Three people. You don't mean a triangle, do you?" The audience was instantly buzzing. At that moment, every eye in the room locked onto Caleb, the key player, and his expression was anything but neutral. The second he heard Mason's name, Caleb froze, his mind blank. He stared at Edwin, stunned, barely able to respond right away. He hadn't expected Edwin to bring this up, especially not on camera, in front of everyone. Could it really be that Edwin thinks exposing the fact he ditched Mason won't hurt his career at all? Or is he just way too full of himself? Caleb's face darkened instantly, his eyes blazing with anger. Charles had been watching Caleb closely. Seeing the fury on his face, he couldn't help but mutter, "Wait. Just mentioning Mason's name and Caleb flips out, so it's confirmed. After splitting with my brother, Mason went straight to Caleb and probably painted me in the worst light. But why hasn't Caleb said anything yet? Could it be that Mason watched the live stream this afternoon and saw my brother was on the show, so he warned Caleb beforehand?" Gabriel gave a barely noticeable nod. Charles's theory was more than plausible. From the moment Caleb got in the car this afternoon and started picking fights with Charles, it was clear he wasn't exactly level-headed. His temper ran hot. Edwin's comment had been like a dance on Caleb's nerve endings. The fact that Caleb hadn't blown up yet meant one thing. Mason must have warned him, and it was obvious Caleb was doing his best to keep his composure, glancing occasionally at the other guests, waiting for someone to step in and break the silence. But not quite. In any other show, or with any other guest, someone would have stepped in by now, offering a graceful exit and brushing the whole thing aside. But Caleb was dealing with this show. And let's be real, after just one episode, fans had already nicknamed it "Let's Go Eat Some Gossip." Gabriel turned to look at Owen and Harper. Last time, Owen had tried to smooth things over and ended up getting himself dragged into it. Now that Harper was right there beside him, Owen would be even more careful. No way he'd speak up unless absolutely necessary. Isabella had learned her lesson too. After the last episode, she'd been called in by her agent for a pep talk and swore off getting involved ever again. And Maverick, as the new guy, he still didn't understand what was going on. Plus, he'd already pissed off Asher and Henry earlier in the afternoon. No way would he open his mouth now. As for the remaining guests, they're lucky just not stoking the flames. Gabriel's gaze swept over Henry and Asher, finally landing on Charles. Unsurprisingly, all three wore expressions tinged with excitement, some more than others. Henry at least had the sense to hold back a bit, clearly remembering his own persona. Charles and Asher, not so much, pure, unfiltered gossip energy on full display, no attempt to hide it at all. So Caleb's hope for someone to step in and smooth things over Already shot. Sure enough, after a full minute of silence, Caleb's expression cracked. His eyes wide with disbelief, even more stunned than when he'd first heard Edwin speak. How long has it been? Why hasn't anyone said a word yet? It's been a full minute of dead air. Charles couldn't hold it anymore. Slapped his hands over his face and burst out laughing. Wait, is Caleb actually waiting for an off-ramp? Who even gave him that idea? The live stream viewers were just as surprised. Caleb had gone silent for a full minute straight. Wait, Caleb, why aren't you talking? Did he think we'd hand him an out? Is that what this is? The guesses came fast, almost instant, and the chat exploded. Charles was laughing so hard it drew glances from everyone around him. Edwin couldn't help but roll his eyes. Sure, Charles could laugh like that over someone else's drama, but this one, it was about him, and the guy still had the nerve to be so unbothered. Edwin couldn't help it. He reached out and pinched Charles's shoulder. Charles immediately turned his head away. Edwin wasn't looking at him, though. His eyes stayed locked on Caleb across the room, and he broke the silence. Caleb, why aren't you saying anything? Caleb shot Edwina a sharp glare. Didn't he make it obvious he didn't want to talk about this anymore? Why keep digging? But now that Edwina had spoken, there was no way to smooth things over. So Edwina really didn't care if this blew up? Caleb couldn't believe it. And then he remembered the message Mason had sent him that afternoon, which only made his temper flare. Edwina was supposed to have dumped Mason, yet Mason still defended him. How important was Edwina in Mason's eyes? Caleb felt a bitter taste rise on his tongue. He'd only made Charles look bad that afternoon, and Mason had texted him afterward. If he ever went after Edwina or Charles again during filming, he was done with him forever. So Caleb had backed off, only for trouble to come knocking on his own door. Caleb let out a cold laugh, no longer holding back the anger. He lifted his gaze and fixed Edwina with a hard stare. What do you want me to say? Should I tell everyone how you ditched your pregnant ex-boyfriend for someone new? Edwina cut in, his smile not touching his eyes. Is that what Mason told you? Edwina spoke slowly, calmly, just the right pace. Every guest in the room and every viewer online heard it clearly. But hearing it was one thing. Understanding it, that was another story. The moment Edwina finished speaking, the chat exploded with question marks. Fans confused, netizens stunned, a chorus of what? Filling the stream. Wait. Did I just hear that right? No. What the hell did Edwina just say? Did he just say he ditched his pregnant ex-boyfriend? The guests around the table looked even more stunned. What did you just say? A man? Who can get pregnant? Who even is that? Wait. Was it Mason you were just talking about? So Mason's pregnant, and you ditched him? Asher let out a dramatic whoa. Henry clapped a hand over his mouth, grinning. This twist was exactly what he'd been waiting for. Pure gold. Owen and Harper were utterly shocked. Owen couldn't believe Edwin would do something like that. He kept shaking his head, glancing at Harper, whispering, No way, no way. Edwin's not like that. Isabella and Maverick were completely frozen. What did we just hear? Did we just get free front row access to this mess? Help, please. Even Gabriel was taken aback. He'd known Edwin had been played by Mason, emotionally and financially, but he hadn't had any idea Mason was actually pregnant. For a split second, Gabriel even wondered if the baby might really be Edwin's. The show's director and producer were utterly speechless. Wait, weren't they just laughing and eating barbecue together, having a great time? How the hell did it spiral like this in under 2 minutes? Edwin, you're supposed to be a regular on the show. Can we please not throw out stuff like that? But the producer couldn't help glancing at the back-end stats. The live viewer count was skyrocketing, even breaking the record from the first episode. The producer swallowed hard. Actually, maybe this works out okay? The director squeezed in to check the numbers. Couldn't argue with the results. Good thing they'd planned for poor signal out on the grasslands and brought satellite gear, or today's stream would have cut out cold. But that wasn't the point. The real question was what exactly had Edwin meant by that line? Soon everyone found out. Caleb's face went ice cold in an instant. So it wasn't? Charles couldn't stop the grin spreading across his face. If Caleb's reacting like that, then Mason really did say those words. Who would have thought? Even Caleb's got a serious crush. Otherwise, no high schooler'd get played by Mason like that. Gabriel heard Charles' comment and instantly relaxed. but also felt deep shame for doubting Edwin just a second ago. Edwin, on the other hand, burst out laughing. Caleb had no idea Edwin would still be grinning in this moment. His temper flared up instantly. What's so funny? What's there to laugh at? You think you can deny abandoning a pregnant Mason? Edwin laughed and cut him off. When did I say I'd try to deny it? I admit, I ditched Mason. He was laughing at his own blindness when it came to people, and at how spot-on Charles had been, proving Caleb really was a total love-struck fool. The other guests went completely speechless hearing that. Wait. No, Edwin, do you even realize what you just admitted? The live chat was now a battlefield of chaos. Bro, Edwin, wait, no, you're not serious. I'm speechless. I'm dying inside. If I'd known you were gonna blow the whole thing on live TV, you should have just stayed off the show. What even do I say? Jerk. More Mason fans showed up out of nowhere, drawn in by the chaos. But when they walked in and heard the bombshell, why men can get pregnant, they didn't care. All they cared about was Mason. No wonder we haven't seen a thing from Mason lately. Edwin, are you even human? You abandoned Mason while he was carrying your child. I can't take it. I'm so angry. Caleb was furious. He even stood up from his seat. Edwin, what kind of attitude is that? Owen noticed the shift and jumped up to block Caleb, whispering urgently, Easy, kid, keep it together. We're still on air. Caleb's face was red with rage, but he heard Owen and managed to hold back. The moment they calmed down, the chat erupted again. Mason fans were boiling over. They'd been worried sick all this time, wondering what happened to Mason. No updates, no posts, just constant dread eating them alive. And now they find out he vanished because he was pregnant with Edwin's baby, and then dumped. How were they supposed to cope? Some fans even started pushing for Edwin to get kicked off the entertainment scene. Then, out of nowhere, a comment popped up. Wait! Guys, check Charles's face. That got everyone snapping back to attention, and they quickly turned to the screen to look at Charles. The show's producers knew exactly what fans wanted. They'd already cut to a close-up of Edwin as soon as he started speaking. Charles sat right beside him, and the camera caught every flicker on his face. There, Charles had both hands over his face, shoulders twitching in small, rapid hitches. It looked almost like he was crying. No way, Charles? Crying. Wait, look closer. Isn't he actually laughing? The comments sent shockwaves through the chat. I pulled up Charles's shot, and yeah, he's definitely laughing. So what's so funny? What's the joke? Isn't Edwin his second brother? He just admitted on camera that he abandoned his pregnant ex-boyfriend. What's there to laugh about? Unless, before anyone could process it, a fan chimed in, unless Charles knows the twist is coming. But before anyone could digest that thought, Edwin suddenly stood up. Edwin kept his usual relaxed smile. When he saw Caleb's furious expression, he didn't flinch. Instead, he sauntered slowly toward him. Owen's heart leapt into his throat. He instinctively stepped in between them. Edwin, you, Caleb. Edwin locked eyes with him, voice calm but curious. I have to ask. You'd still raise the baby if it weren't yours? Caleb snorted, without hesitation. Of course I would. Before Caleb could finish, Edwin jumped in. I would too. That's why, when I found out Mason wasn't carrying my baby, I still thought about taking care of him, seeing him through the pregnancy, because I really liked him. I've had a crush on him since college. Caleb froze mid-breath. Wait, what do you mean it's not your kid? The other guests all perked up at once. Just as they figured, there's a twist. Henry was so excited he almost forgot his cool act, barely catching himself before bursting out laughing like Charles and Asher. Charles was practically howling. So Mason really told you the baby's mine? Caleb went stiff. He stared right at Charles. It wasn't. He's something else. Charles wiped a tear, laughing hard, chasing around for dads like it's some kind of game. What the hell are you talking about? Caleb finally snapped. What did going around looking for a dad even mean? And he never expected Edwin to be such a coward. Couldn't even own up to something he'd done. Edwin. Caleb suddenly remembered Mason's warning. He didn't lash out at Charles but turned sharply toward Edwin. You're not seriously afraid to admit it, are you? You already said in front of the camera that you left Mason behind. So why can't you admit this? Got proof. Edwin cut him off. What kind of proof? Caleb muttered. Mason wouldn't know who the father is? Exactly. Charles chimed in, nodding with a grin. Would Mason really not know whose baby it was? Then he turned to Edwin and grinned. I thought I was the only one on Earth who'd believe two people sharing a bed could magically make a baby. Guess now I have to add you, Caleb, to that list. Caleb stared at Charles in disbelief. Through the flicker of the grill fire, Charles wore an expression so innocent it was almost cruel. Did I say anything wrong? Not a single thing. Edwin still wasn't happy about Charles calling him a love-struck fool, but now wasn't the time to argue. He took over the conversation. In my second month with Mason, I brought him home against my parents' wishes and insisted on staying together. I even considered cutting ties with my family just so we could get married. Thinking back, Edwin briefly closed his eyes before speaking again. So tell me, how do you think someone like me, who was ready to sever all family ties for Mason, even willing to marry him, ended up breaking it off? The set went completely silent. Caleb's face was stunned. Edwin had really been ready to cut off his family for Mason? Seriously? But Mason told me. Charles saw what Caleb was thinking and asked, Caleb, did Mason ever tell you about this? Caleb clenched his jaw. After a long pause, he finally shook his head. No. He told me that my family didn't approve of him being with my older brother, so my brother ultimately chose our parents and left him behind. Charles figured out exactly what Mason had made up. Caleb froze. How did you know? The look on Charles's face told him he'd guessed right, and he couldn't help but laugh again. So my older brother was really the ultimate sucker all along, was in love with him for his money while they were together, then slandered him after breaking up? Poor guy. Gabriel gave a small smile. Tell me about it. Caleb, the day my brother brought Mason home, everyone was there except my third brother, who couldn't make it. When my brother said he wanted to cut ties with us, even my eldest brother threatened him with a company penalty fee. But he didn't budge. And yet, Mason was the one urging my brother not to break things off over him. Ever wonder why? Charles turned the question back on Caleb. Caleb's mind was a mess. Without thinking, he shot back, why? Because my brother's penalty fee was huge. 8 figures across all his endorsements. After paying that, I bet Mason would have been left with barely $1 million. Charles said, glancing at Edwin. Sure, the numbers were close. But didn't he have any pride? Edwin gritted his teeth. 1.5 million. That was his last stand. Fine, 1.5 million. No need to ruin my brother's reputation. Charles turned back to Caleb with a smirk. I spelled it out so clearly, Caleb. You get it now, right? Caleb's head was buzzing. What exactly did he know? What was he supposed to understand? Caleb felt strangely lost for a moment. If Charles was telling the truth, then everything Mason had told him was just a lie? Wait. Caleb's voice came out rough. But Mason said, another stubborn, hopeless romantic. Can't see the truth until it's too late. Charles turned fully away. Brother, play the recording. The restaurant had no cameras, but Charlotte had brought a recorder that day just in case. After breaking up with Mason, she'd handed the recorder to Edwin, just in case he ever needed proof if Mason tried to come back and stab him in the back. Edwin had never planned to play it. After all, he'd once loved that guy for years. He didn't want to drag things into public humiliation, but Mason should have known better than to go after Charles. Edwin pulled out his phone. The recording was still right there, saved in his files. No preamble, just straight to the point when he tapped play. Mason's voice cut through cold and clear. 5 million. Give me 5 million, and I'll leave your son alone. The voice on the screen was all too familiar, and Mason, his eyes bloodshot, couldn't hold back anymore. Why? Why can't I get through to Caleb's phone? With satellite signal, the live stream ran smooth as silk. No lag, no glitches. As Mason screamed in despair, the tablet speakers kept playing his own voice. If I'm asking for money, once I get it, I won't bother Edwin anymore. The old fear crept back in. Mason's mind went blank. Stop it. Stop playing it. He clutched his face, too terrified to look at the live chat. Edwin, please just stop. He told Caleb exactly what to do. Caleb promised he wouldn't bring this up again, didn't he? So why was Edwin suddenly playing the recording? He'd finally found someone who'd accept him. Things were starting to turn around. So why couldn't Caleb just keep quiet and leave Charles alone? The breakdown happened in an instant, and by then, Mason had already forgotten. He'd been the one who'd pushed Caleb to go after Charles, but Mason never saw it coming. The blow would come right back at him. The live feed kept going. Mason couldn't stand it anymore. He slammed the tablet across the room, but for some reason, the sound kept playing. Maybe the thing was built too well. Then Charlotte's voice cut in. So, if I hand over the money, you'll disappear from our lives completely? He answered without hesitation. Of course, but could you just make it clear it's a voluntary gift? Shut up. Stop it. Just stop saying anything. Mason's eyes were red with fury. He rushed forward, snatched the tablet off the floor, and slammed it down again hard. Pick up. Smash. Repeat, over and over, until the screen shattered into pieces and the sound finally died. Only then did Mason feel some relief. He collapsed to his knees, breathing hard, letting out a bitter little smile. But the live stream didn't end just because he broke the tablet. On set, the night prairie was already quiet, but now even the crew members who'd been whispering among themselves held their breath, not daring to so much as breathe, afraid of missing a single crucial detail. Edwin was thoughtful enough to turn up his phone's speaker all the way, making sure everyone in the room could hear clearly, to make sure the live stream audience heard too. He even pulled off his recording earpiece and leaned close to the phone speaker. Charlotte and Mason's voices came through clearly, one sentence after another, until everyone caught Edwin's words, thick with disappointment and hurt. 5 million? That's all I'm worth to you. You're only with me for $5 million? To this day, Charles still couldn't help but chuckle. He leaned over slightly, trying to keep his voice low, but everyone within earshot could hear anyway. You know, Charlotte actually planned to offer 10 million at first, but Mason surprised us all by saying 5 was enough. Gabriel smiled. That's quite the myopic view, if you ask me. The guests all turned to look at Caleb. Caleb shook his head, muttering, "No way." Charles didn't explain. He just smiled and said, "It's okay, Caleb. Just keep listening. The rest of the conversation is gonna blow your mind. If you still don't believe me after that, I can't help it." Edwin's lips slowly curled into a smile. Now wasn't the time to argue with Caleb. The proof was right there, no need for further explanations. Caleb barely had the focus to keep listening anymore. He knew Mason's voice too well. Just hearing that first line, he was certain it wasn't AI, it wasn't fake. That's exactly why it hit him so hard. He couldn't accept it, and the more he listened, the more he wanted to run. He kept telling himself this recording was just Edwin's setup, some last-minute cover-up to save his own skin. Edwin wouldn't have dared bring up something like this in front of all these guests and viewers unless he had it all planned. Caleb was starting to convince himself otherwise. Then Charles suddenly chimed in. Wait, didn't Charlotte already have this recording notarized as evidence? Edwin nodded. Caleb's pupils snapped wide. His heart clenched like a fist, pain lancing through him so sharp he nearly couldn't breathe. Notarizing evidence meant it had been formally preserved for legal use, which meant this recording had passed judicial verification. No way it could be forged. Before Charles spoke, Caleb had still managed to fool himself into believing the tape was just Edwin's way of clearing his name. But now he couldn't avoid the truth anymore. Caleb wanted to cover his ears and shut it out, but Edwin's voice was too loud, the silence too thick. Even with his hands over his head, Mason's words echoed through the empty field like they had no escape. He understood every word of their conversation, but the meaning behind them, he couldn't bear to dwell on it, because Caleb knew if he let himself think too deeply, there'd be no going back for him and Mason. Then Charlotte said she wanted Mason to have an amniocentesis, and silence fell, long and heavy, long enough that Caleb thought the video must have ended. Then suddenly, from his phone came Mason's voice. Small, wounded. Edwin, you really think I'd lie? Henry couldn't hold it in anymore. He burst out laughing, his usual composure long gone. It's just a DNA test. What's the big deal? He's more dramatic than my mom. Asher picked up. He's asking for $500,000, and now he's offended over a paternity test. He shook his head, glancing at Edwin. Only your family's this polite. If it were me. He didn't finish, but the meaning was clear. Charles laughed out loud. You two keep talking. I'm loving every second. Caleb's face went white, the last hint of color draining away. His eyes were vacant, fixed on the phone in Edwin's hand. In that instant, he heard something heavy hit the ground and shatter. For a long moment, his mind went blank. Only the occasional crackle of flames from the grill breaking the silence. Why hadn't Mason gone for a DNA test? If he had, the Hua family would have handed him $5 million. Caleb's expression was nearly hopeless. The conversation ended with Mason's long silence. Edwin slid the phone into his pocket and looked up at Caleb, who'd lost all strength. Now believe it? he said slowly. Mason won't even admit the kid's mine. Caleb's lips moved silently, his gaze unfocused. After a long pause, a faint whisper escaped. I'll call Mason. Still thinking about calling Mason, Charles let out a long, exasperated sigh. Guess you're even more of a love-struck fool than my older brother. But seriously, if you wanted to call him, why hasn't he called you? Think about that. Edwin's eyes flickered with amusement. Then he asked, what would you even say on the phone? You want us three to have a showdown? Caleb's voice was hoarse. I need to hear it from Mason himself. Henry couldn't resist. He cut in. Just one question. Did Mason ever ask you for money? No surprise, gaucher. That's the real question. Charles turned to Caleb with sudden interest. Sure enough, Caleb flinched hard. In the next second, his hand jerked, and the phone slipped from his fingers, landing in the grass. Henry's eyes lit up with understanding. A knowing smile curled at the corner of his lips. Charles shook his head, murmuring, based on that reaction, don't tell me he's actually handed over a lot. Edwin let out a quiet sigh. Looks like that's about it. Might even be more than what I spent myself. Edwin couldn't help but chuckle. Caleb's mind was a mess. The night on the grassland should have been cool, but he was drenched in sweat. He found himself going over every moment he'd shared with Mason. Right after their first project together 2 years ago, Caleb had fallen for Mason. But back then, Mason was seeing someone else, so Caleb didn't push. He just kept an eye on him from afar. Still, they weren't completely out of touch. Caleb would send occasional good wishes, and Mason always replied instantly. That was enough to keep their chats going, casually at first, then gradually turning into something more like friendship over the years. Caleb had almost given up on this feeling, until 2 weeks ago, when Mason suddenly called him in the middle of the night, sobbing. On the other end, Mason poured out everything he'd been through. How Edwin had dumped him, how the company had dropped him, and that he felt completely trapped. Caleb's anger boiled over. He almost wanted to expose Edwin right then. This guy was a complete waste of space. But Mason stopped him, said he still had feelings for Edwin and didn't want things to end badly between them. Caleb suggested abortion, but Mason refused again. It wasn't until Caleb offered to let Mason stay at his place and cover the breach of contract fee. And even today, right before heading out to shoot, Caleb had just sent him a big chunk of cash. All the pieces clicked into place. The truth was staring him in the face. He couldn't deny it anymore. Suddenly, Caleb felt his vision go dark. Hey, you okay? Owen reached out fast to catch him. Asher. Looks like this hit harder than we thought. He glanced at Henry, seeking confirmation. What do you think? Henry suddenly snapped back into character, his face shifting to one of concern as he stood and hurried toward Caleb. Caleb, my condolences. Wait, Henry, is that how you console someone? Gabriel couldn't hold back a laugh. His face lit up with amusement. Asher had been annoyed at Henry's pretense, but the moment he heard those words, he cracked up too. But human sorrow doesn't travel well. While the others laughed, Caleb sat alone on the ground, picking up his phone and staring blankly at its single bar of signal. There was no trace left of the smug confidence he'd shown earlier that day. Head down, shoulders slumped, he finally whispered to Edwin, Mason, is it? His voice cracked. Kid. Do you know who it is? Calling him kid now? Oh, come on. Clearly you're desperate to be a stepdad. Edwin watched Caleb's broken state and for some reason, it hit too close to home. He almost opened his mouth to comfort him when Charles' cheerful voice cut in. Wait. Caleb's reaction is exactly like my older brother's back then. Edwin winced at the reminder. The words died in his throat, leaving only a quiet, who knows? It sure isn't mine or yours. He's been pregnant nearly 5 months now. We've barely been together too. Caleb couldn't hold it in anymore. He'd been with Mason for every scan. The baby really was almost 5 months along. His composure shattered. So that's how it is, he muttered. Charles' eyes shot wide open. No way, no way. Caleb actually cried. He jumped up, instantly drawn in by gossip, and marched toward Caleb. The other guests started gathering around too. Out with the old, in with the new, Harper offered, trying to soothe him. Owen added, better to see his true colors sooner than later. Isabella, cheer up. Maverick thought for a second. If Caleb doesn't mind, I can give you a little intro. Charles shot a sharp look at Maverick. Do you really think I don't see what you're up to? You're trying to set yourself up with Caleb, aren't you? Asher felt the same unease. Even if you're looking, pick someone better. Maverick's definitely nodded. Maverick's face twisted in disbelief. What the hell is that supposed to mean, Asher? Nothing at all, Asher said with wide-eyed innocence. I just used you as an example, because you're clearly not a good match. Maverick was livid. What kind of crap is that? Not a good match? But Maverick hadn't revealed his identity yet, so he could only grit his teeth and say, I'm not like that. Henry's eyes drifted over quietly. You really aren't, are you? Charles swiveled his head with a mischievous glint. Maverick went silent, then quickly changed the subject. Forget it. Let's focus on comforting Caleb instead. Charles was thrilled. Did you just pivot a little too fast? But Charles was genuinely delighted. Hadn't seen a moment this juicy in forever. Caleb had been hit hard. He couldn't believe Mason had only come close for money. Tears spilled one after another. This face? Even my older brother didn't look this bad when he cried. He wasn't crying back then, though. He was just really hit hard by it. Edwin couldn't stand watching anymore. He yanked Caleb up by the arm. Crying? I didn't even cry when I went through that. Charles narrowed his eyes, suspicious. Edwin gritted his teeth. I made it through. It's not gonna kill you either. Caleb wailed even louder. Charles couldn't hold it in. He covered his face and burst out laughing. The other guests couldn't help themselves either, feeling sorry for Caleb while still cracking up. A recording session where only Caleb ended up hurt. Mission accomplished. Charles glanced back at the nearby live feed camera, his lips curling into a sharp smirk. This whole thing must have felt like a nightmare for Mason, watching himself get exposed, with no way to stop it. Just helpless. Charles suddenly wondered what the live chat was like right now. But too bad, his phone had zero signal. And sure enough, the live stream was playing out exactly as Charles imagined. Today's internet audience wasn't easily swayed by drama. So as soon as they caught Charles' eerie grin, viewers instinctively blocked out Mason's fans. Charles didn't disappoint. Soon enough, the crowd heard that legendary line. Googling for dads all over town. The chat went completely silent. So wait. The kid's not Edwin's? If it's not Edwin's, then what's the big deal? Just a normal breakup. Before the streamers could even start debating, Charles was already saying, let's go to recording, and the online crowd lit up instantly. So there really is a twist? Others weren't buying it. I'd love to see what kind of twist could save Edwin. This is hilarious. But before anyone could finish typing their insults at Edwin, they heard Mason's voice cut through with a single word. 5 million. The chat went dead for a beat, then exploded into question marks across the whole screen. Was that Mason? I've seen him voice a show before. Definitely his tone. Wait. Wasn't Mason the one Edwin dumped? How can he be asking for 5 million after being left? Hold up, Charles. What do you mean your family was already setting aside 10 million? Ugh, so Mason's not satisfied with 5 million. What a greedy little monster. Wait. How come you're all just believing this? What if the recording was faked? Before they could finish their doubts, Charles seemed to read their minds and dropped the bomb. The recording had been notarized. From that moment on, every single chat thread flipped entirely in Mason's favor. Viewers kept watching the drama unfold while quietly feeling sorry for Edwin. I can't take it. Edwin's fans are already in tears, so my idol was played both for love and money. Seriously, where does Mason even get the nerve? He won't even do a DNA test. He has no right demanding 5 million from Edwin. You really think we all look like easy marks? The twist hit too fast. Edwin's fans were already playing dead, some even cracking under the pressure. Now you're telling them it was actually Edwin who got played? Edwin had been grinding in the industry for years. No scandals, no drama. But now that this blew up, and before even half the truth came out, Mason's fans were already riding him hard. Now that the truth's out, Edwin's fans are torn between heartbreak and laughter. How dare Mason and his fans pull this kind of crap? Where's Mason's fan base? Come out and apologize right now. I can't take it. This kid hasn't faced anything like this before. You're not getting off easy unless you give us an apology today. Still haven't seen your brother after all this time. Maybe he's just hiding because his belly's too big to show up? The commenters couldn't help but burst out laughing. Honestly, might actually be true. For months in, and you're already showing? Guys probably hit that mark too. Didn't Mason just drop a reality show recently? Guess why he's been MIA now? The ultimate upgrade, your idol turned into a dad. You fans really know how to pick him, don't you? The chat exploded with laughter. Savage? I'm asking you, how savage is that mouth? Oh wait, where's Mason's fanbase all of a sudden? Don't tell me they're not into the whole dead thing? Help! I'm dying laughing. Can we please stop saying daddy now? Too bad. Internet users today just love stirring up trouble. They don't stop at talking about it. They actually started trending it on Weibo. By the time Edwin confronted Caleb live on air, thousands had already flooded into the stream, especially all the content farms that smell trouble from miles away. The live stream hadn't even finished rolling when those channels were already chopping up the footage. By the time the stream went off, dozens of accounts had already posted their clips. Edwin's fanbase is massive to begin with. Then this afternoon dropped the bombshell that Charles was his brother. Now both names are still blazing on the trending charts, and the whole thing just blew up. Charlotte didn't expect Edwin to go straight at Caleb on live TV like that, but honestly, it's probably for the best. Better to settle things now than have him stir up trouble with Charles and Edwin during future taping sessions. As for Mason, he's only got himself to blame. Charlotte wasn't surprised either. Mason managed to pull the wool over two people's eyes back to back. Now that the recording's out, at least he won't be able to pull that pregnant act again, right? The Weibo square was buzzing all night long, with netizens either debating whose kid Mason really is, or dissecting the idea of a male mom. Some even started comparing Edwin and Caleb, trying to figure out who came off worse. In the end, they all agreed Caleb had it worst. Sure, Edwin probably did pay Mason, but he figured out who he really was ages ago. Caleb? Who knows, he might have even gone to prenatal appointments with him. Otherwise, why did he break down so hard when they asked about the kid? The internet was in full swing while the filming site on the grassland had gone completely quiet. After breaking down, Caleb didn't waste time. He went straight to the production team for a satellite phone. Once he left, there was no more drama to watch, so everyone else naturally drifted off too. Charles helped clean up the dishes and accidentally ended up covered in grease. Edwin rolled his eyes. Go shower. Let me handle this. Charles grinned. Then I'll leave it to you, second brother. He headed back to his tent for fresh clothes. The crew had set up portable toilets and showers nearby for the campers' convenience. They even got their drinking water from there. When Charles came out of the shower, he was surprised to see Maverick standing off in the distance. Maverick seemed to be on the phone, standing a good distance away. Charles didn't have any interest in eavesdropping, so he just grabbed his clothes and turned to head back to the tent. Then Maverick's voice suddenly spiked. I swear I haven't cheated. I don't know what else I can say to make you believe me. Charles froze mid-step, his expression lighting up with excitement. Cheating? No way. Is Maverick's wife finally calling him out? One juicy rumor after another. This is actually thrilling. Charles couldn't move a muscle. Should I stay put and listen? Or creep closer? Walking up directly might be kind of rude. Though, wait. Why's Maverick's voice dropping now? Should I even get closer? Charles stood there, torn to pieces. At the same moment, Edwin and Gabriel both paused mid-task, their movements synchronized. Even though they were a ways off, the distance wasn't enough to drown out Charles's thoughts. Edwin placed the last clean bowl in the rack, looked up, and said to Gabriel, I'm done here. I'll hit the restroom first. He had to get to Charles. This kind of gossip was too good to miss. Gabriel picked up the empty bucket beside him. I'm heading out to refill water. Want to come? Maverick was about to blow. Gabriel needed to get there fast, assess the situation, and prep a damage control plan. Not that he cared about gossip. Definitely not. The water run was a solid excuse, and too good to pass up, so Edwin nodded, and the two hurried toward Charles. And just then, at the entrance of the shower hut, Charles finally gave in to curiosity over restraint. Charles took a deep breath and walked straight toward Maverick. As he got close, he deliberately made a sound, huh, then asked in a feigned, puzzled tone, Oh, it's you, Maverick? This place is pitch black. What are you doing here? Anyway, Maverick hadn't expected anyone to be around. He barely managed to raise his hand toward the phone when a woman's furious voice blasted through. Maverick? Who's with you right now? The scream was so loud it cut through the open field like a blade, even without speakerphone. Charles couldn't pretend he hadn't heard. Maverick's wife already had some evidence of his infidelity. He wasn't about to let her think the worst. Quick as a flash, Charles said, Hi, I'm Charles. Sorry to intrude, Maverick, who's this? His eyes sparkled with unmistakable curiosity. That's gotta be your wife. Maverick's face twisted in surprise, but he kept his cool. After a slow breath, he said, "She's family." Charles dragged out the word. "Oh, right, well, it's getting late. Aren't you supposed to be showering?" Maverick stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Normally, when someone says they're on the phone with family, you'd give them a little space. But Charles, he's still standing there, chatting like nothing's wrong. If this were any other time, Maverick would have loved to keep talking. He found Charles attractive in that classic way that matched his taste. But right now, he didn't have the energy. He bit down on his irritation and said, "It's not even late yet. I need to finish this call." After a pause, he lowered his voice. "Honey, it's time to rest. I'll talk to you later." Before the words were fully out, a sharp voice cut in. "Wait, Maverick. I'm coming to your set." Before the words had even finished falling, a woman's voice cut in from the phone. "Wait, Maverick, I'm coming to your shoot location." Maverick's face fell again. Before he could respond, Charles stepped forward with a grin. "No problem at all. Just let the crew know when your family comes by." Last episode, my parents were there the whole time. They made it smooth sailing for us. Promise you'll be taken care of. You won't miss a thing. Maverick shot upright, stunned. Wait, what are you even talking about? How much longer is Charles gonna keep listening? And just which part of this did you even think he wanted the other person to come over? Maverick was fuming inside, but he couldn't actually blow up at Charles. Maverick took a deep breath, had already learned his lesson twice from the phone's volume, and quickly lowered the sound before stepping back 2 paces, putting some distance between himself and Charles. "No need to bother." "Wait, what do you mean no need?" Edwin finally couldn't hold it in anymore and blurted out. Hearing Edwin's voice, Charles lit up instantly. He turned around and realized not only was Edwin there, but Gabriel had come too. The sight of them made Maverick's expression shift again in an instant. He just picked a secluded spot to make the call. Why were they all showing up like this? Don't these people even know what personal space is? Charles, of course, knew full well he was just pretending not to. Seeing the two, Charles quickly repeated what he'd overheard and shot frantic signals toward Edwin and Gabriel. "Last time my parents came on set, they were all arranged. Should be fine for Maverick's family too." Gabriel forced his mouth down, barely keeping from smiling as he glanced past Charles toward the one in question. The light was dim here, but enough glowed from a nearby cabin to catch Maverick's expression. Wide-eyed and panicked, his phone buzzed with someone on the other end, and he instinctively pulled it back. "No need. Absolutely possible." Edwin cut in before Maverick could finish, grinning at him. "Don't sweat it. Whether Gabriel helps or not, I've got your back. Real-life gossip's way more fun than online rumors. And if we're gonna eat the fruit, the whole cast needs to be here." Charles's lips curled into a knowing smile. Only my brother's got the real game sense. He didn't even say a word. So why's only Edwin the one who gets it? Gabriel cut straight to the point. "The production team doesn't restrict guests from bringing family or staff. If you want to join the shoot, just contact the director's office directly. They'll handle the arrangements." Maverick's face fell instantly. "Wait, hold on. Why are these people just talking over each other like this? When did I ever say I wanted my family here? I didn't want them coming at all." But it was too late now. The woman's voice erupted again from the phone. "Was that Gabriel and Edwin talking just now?" Gabriel said yes. "So why are you still refusing me?" "Maverick, be honest. Do you have something to hide? You afraid to face me straight on?" He'd never dare. Charles was fired up, his eyes blazing bright under the dim light of the prairie. He was losing it. Even though Maverick had turned down the volume, the sound still carried in the quiet grassland. "Can you keep it down?" Maverick snapped louder. Charles barely held back a laugh. "Look at Maverick. He's practically tearing up from emotion." Edwin and Gabriel both smirked. "You sure that's tears of feeling? But whatever. They weren't really talking to Maverick anyway. Just making sure the person on the phone heard every word. I'd love to talk to you softly, but who made me do this? You're shouting like a banshee." I had no choice but to bite back. "Come over. What do you even want here?" Maverick was ready to burst, barely caring about Charles and the others anymore as he hurried away from them, phone pressed to his ear. They couldn't afford for them to hear any more. "Maverick, it's too dark over there. Don't go too far." Charles couldn't help but call out again. Maverick stumbled forward and nearly fell. Charles feigned shock, pressing a hand to his lips. Did I warn you too late? Look at Maverick get all worked up over nothing. It wasn't that you warned me too late. Wasn't it more like you warned me just in time? Edwin clapped Charles on the shoulder. All right, let him finish his call. Let's head back. They'd said all they needed to say already. Now it was just up to the other side to decide if they wanted to show up. Gabriel had made everything clear. If the other person came, they could always reach out to production directly, which meant Maverick didn't even need to give a say. The other party could come over without him at all. Now they just had to sit back and wait. A married couple tearing each other apart on camera. Just thinking about it gives me chills. When Gabriel came back with water, he found Maverick still deep in conversation far off in the distance. Noticing their stares, Maverick took a few more steps away before stopping again. Going this far, Maverick's really scared, isn't he? Charles couldn't stop smirking. Let's go, Gabriel said to Charles and Edwin. We're heading back. On their way back to camp, they ran into Henry and Owen, who were carrying toiletries. They exchanged brief greetings before moving on, until Henry suddenly asked, "Did something just happen?" All three of them froze mid-step. Charles looked puzzled. "Why would you say that?" Edwin asked. Henry's eyes narrowed on Charles, a slow smirk curling his lips. "Gut feeling like something interesting happened to you guys. You're not gonna spill the beans." Owen blinked, confused. What kind of interesting thing? How hadn't he noticed anything? Charles couldn't help but mutter under his breath. No wonder Henry's such a sneaky one. Caught on already? Well, Charles said, nothing big. Just had a quick chat with Maverick while he was on the phone. But what it actually is? Sorry, can't tell you. Still, Maverick's wife is a go-getter, won't keep you waiting long. We'll probably meet her by tomorrow afternoon at the latest. Henry clearly wasn't satisfied with Charles's answer, but he let it slide, offering only a knowing smile before turning and heading toward the cabin. Owen remained baffled. Seeing no one was going to explain, he just shrugged and fell into step behind Henry. Back at camp, Charles found Caleb sitting by the entrance of his tent. His shoulders slumped, eyes red and unfocused, staring blankly at nothing in particular. So he just got off the call with Mason, looking this wrecked. He must have finally realized he was played. Heartbroken and all. Charles bit his lip, then turned to Edwin with a quiet smile. Edwin was completely confused. What's he looking at? Anyway, then he heard Charles mentally grumbling. My older brother was basically identical to Caleb during his breakup phase. Two souls adrift in the same storm. Doesn't he have any compassion? Caleb was practically setting traps for them both this afternoon. Where exactly did you get the idea he's not a grudge holder? Edwin didn't hesitate. He turned and walked straight into the tent. It was getting late. He needed to shower and freshen up. Gabriel followed right behind him into the tent. It wasn't that Gabriel didn't want to comfort anyone. He just had a gut feeling that Caleb needed space more than anything. The best thing he could do was leave him alone. Once both men were gone, Charles wore a look of quiet regret. I'm not exactly the comforting type. Fine, let Caleb cool off on his own. Honestly, I just really want to scroll through Weibo for a bit. I remember Maverick's ex-wife had a Weibo account. Before she started spilling the beans about him, her feed was posting all kinds of weird stuff. Charles was still torn when suddenly Edwin popped back out of the tent. Hey, aren't you supposed to be showering? Charles asked, puzzled. Edwin held up his phone, deadpan. Just remembered. I've got one more brand promo tweet to post. Got a sync with production for satellite signal. Me too. Charles jumped in right away. Once I'm online, I can secretly look up Maverick's wife's Weibo account. Charles was buzzing with excitement. Edwin was even happier. Turns out coming on this show was the best decision he's ever made. What's better than being the first to know the juicy details? Answer: nothing. Before long, both men had hooked up to the satellite signal. Charles headed back to his tent, while Edwin took his phone into the shower. It was still early. The live stream from the production crew hadn't cut yet. To capture as much usable footage as possible, cameras were even installed inside the tents. By 10 p.m., the live stream was in full swing. After scarfing down the latest gossip on Weibo, fans rushed straight to the live stream of Travel Together. The moment they joined, the main feed showed Caleb sitting alone, looking glum. Outside the campsite, all the other guests had gone off to freshen up. leaving only Caleb behind. After a quick search, viewers finally spotted Charles in the last livestream room. The production team had thoughtfully provided a sleeping bag for each guest inside the tent, and with plenty of space to spare, Charles slid his own all the way to the back before crawling in and immediately pulling out his phone to scroll through Weibo. He was so engrossed in scrolling that he didn't notice he'd ended up right in front of the camera. Though the angle didn't show what he was reading, viewers could clearly see every shift in his expression. With just a small lamp glowing softly inside the tent, Charles suddenly burst into laughter, clutching his phone and slapping his leg. "No way. I can't even handle this." His gut instinct is seriously spot on. How did he even catch that? Chat exploded with, "Wait. What? Charles isn't actually eating up the drama between Mason and Caleb, is he? Who was he talking about? Who figured what out? Could this be another juicy scoop? I can't take it anymore. Charles, why don't you just speak up? What's so secret that we can't hear?" "Yeah. Charles, I'm your most loyal fan. Please share some of that juicy gossip with me." Too bad, no matter how loud the chat got, Charles didn't hear a thing. Only Edwin and Gabriel knew what Charles was laughing about at that moment. On his way back from the shower, Edwin also found Henry's alt account and scrolled through a few tweets Henry had posted just minutes earlier. "Gosher. The spender really is generous. 5 million in damages, just like that. Mason's got the luck of a true mama's boy." Edwin was stunned. Caleb actually paid Mason that much? No wonder I'm not as obsessed with Caleb as some people are. Though he did spend a lot himself. Whatever, back to the feed. "Gosher. But the mama's boy won't be happy for long. Apparently, the spender cried to the director just now, saying he'd sue him as soon as they got back. He was bawling so hard I couldn't even mock him." "Gosher. This show is getting really interesting. Look at that face. Haken's about to be next in line for a major disaster." Edwin couldn't help but chuckle, quickening his pace toward the tent. Gabriel went straight to the producer and gave him a brief heads up about Maverick's wife possibly arriving tomorrow. "Ask them to prep accordingly. Even better, keep it a surprise for Maverick." The producer didn't quite get the hint behind Gabriel's words, but he agreed right away anyway. "Surprises for guests. That's my specialty. I'm the king of these things." Night fell deeper, and one by one, the tents went dark. Only Charles's tent still had the lights on. It was a big tent, with Charles and Edwin each taking up one side, while Gabriel just unrolled his sleeping bag right in the middle. All three were lying in their sleeping bags, phones in hand. Someone might have thought they were all scrolling through the night's trending topics. The truth was, only Charles was actually scrolling through his phone. Edwin and Gabriel were just sitting there, patiently waiting for Charles to find Maverick's wife's Weibo account. By 10 o'clock that night, Charles flipped over in his sleeping bag. "Ugh. Why can't I find her? I'm sure Maverick's wife was the admin of the fan group. How come none of these are her?" Gabriel blinked, surprised. "Wait. She was the admin of Maverick's fan group? No wonder she had proof of his affair. What's that even called? Nothing ventured, nothing gained." Edwin quickly switched to his gossip account and followed Maverick, then applied to join every single one of his fan groups. Could have been that Charles scrolled too fast and missed her? He decided to help out. Charles went through the admin avatars in each fan group, one by one, double-checking carefully. Nope. Not here. Charles's brow furrowed slightly. Maverick's wife married him 3 years ago, when he was just starting out. She not only supported him financially, but even ran his fan club from the beginning. Could it be that the fan club management changed recently? Edwin's fingers paused mid-scroll. That's definitely possible. Once an artist hits it big, they usually overhaul their inner circle. With fan numbers skyrocketing, you'd want seasoned pros handling the major stuff. And someone like Maverick, guy with secrets, would definitely use the chance to install people he trusts. Charles was still deep in thought. Switching managers is a real possibility. But I remember when Maverick got exposed back then, his wife was still running things. Wait. Could it be she's actually the thread moderator? Thread moderators are also called hosts. Usually, they're either top-tier fans or official staff. Charles quickly pulled up Maverick's thread and started digging for details. Not long after, his voice lit up with excitement. Edwin and Gabriel both perked up. So which host is his wife? Anyway, can we get a solid lead on this? Charles scrolled through Weibo, shaking his head with a sigh. No wonder Maverick got crushed so hard. His wife's a diehard superfan with her own alt account. She was behind every single promo and anti-hate campaign. Latest post. Wait, flight ticket and the destination. Doesn't that match our shoot location this episode? Charles's eyes lit up. With the key information of the flight ticket, Edwin and Gabriel quickly located the Weibo account. Ella loves Maverick. Clicking into the profile, they saw the very post Charles had mentioned. The flight ticket. Edwin squinted at the screen. 3 a.m.? If he didn't stop for sleep, wouldn't that mean he'd make it to their shoot site by morning? Edwin couldn't help but smirk. Gabriel tapped into the comment section of the first post. Maverick's biggest fan in the official super chat. Her followers are mostly Maverick fans too. After seeing the ticket's purpose, the fans got fired up and started asking, is Ella going to Maverick's shoot location? 1 minute ago, Ella said to that fan, yeah, going to catch him red-handed. Fans thought she was joking, so the replies were all just haha after haha. Charles couldn't help chuckling at how gullible the fans were. Honestly, poor fans probably never guessed Ella's catching her husband cheating was actually real. Charles couldn't stop grinning. Would have done a little roll in his sleeping bag if it weren't so cramped. After scrolling through Ella's past posts on Maverick's superfan account for a while, Charles found no other useful information, so he gave up. Well, it makes sense. Maverick wouldn't be this careless on Weibo before everything blew up. Guess we'll just have to wait till tomorrow then. And honestly, I remember the original plot. Maverick and his wife went off the rails. And Maverick wasn't just cheating. He had a male benefactor, plus he was secretly funding a male college student on the side. Or so they say. Edwin and Gabriel both blinked in shock. Maverick, he really did play the field. It was getting late. Charles was tired and too lazy to dig through his notes. Anyway, he'd find out tomorrow. Charles finally put his phone down, still buzzing with the day's antics, and headed to bed. Gabriel glanced over. You asleep yet? Charles nodded, barely holding back a yawn. Tired as hell. Gabriel shifted his gaze to Edwin. Edwin let out a long yawn and shut his phone. Lights out. The tent went dark in an instant. Before slipping on his eye mask, Charles grabbed a shirt and draped it over the camera, cutting off the stream with a clean blackout. They were asleep, but the live stream audience, they were wide awake. Yo, you all see that? We saw that look on Charles's face. Total, I just found out the juicy secret face. What even was it? Ugh, I wish I could have snuck into Charles's sleeping bag and watched with him. Count me in. And honestly, that sleeping bag might have burst from all of us piling in. The chat stayed buzzing for ages, but Charles had no clue. When he opened his eyes again, the sky was already light. Charles sat up. Gabriel and Edwin were already on their feet. He pulled on fresh clothes and stepped outside just as the producer bellowed through a megaphone. Morning, everyone. We've got a feast waiting for you. Once all guests are here, we're handing out a little surprise. Charles's sleepy vibe vanished in an instant. His eyes widened. Surprise? For Maverick? Huh. Charles quickly turned to scan the room for Maverick. Whatever his wife had told him last night, Maverick looked completely unfazed, relaxed even. He sat close to Caleb, leaning in as he whispered something low. Caleb's eyes were blank, clearly not catching a word. Caleb really is devastated by the breakup. Wait. Owen's dark circles are insane. Charles's comment finally caught Edwin and Gabriel's attention, and when they turned to look at Owen, they both blinked. They really were that bad. Noticing Charles watching him, Owen slowly walked over. What's up? Charles whispered. Owen glanced at Maverick, his expression tight with discomfort. He said nothing. Henry drifted in with a faint smile. Talk till 3 a.m., I swear. Overheard every word from the next tent. Maverick seriously invested in Caleb. Charles immediately got it, clamping his lips shut to keep from laughing. You're saying he's after Caleb again, aren't you? Look at him. Henry raised an eyebrow, smiling like he's got the whole world wrapped up. Seems things went pretty well. Seeing Asher approach, Henry turned to him. Right? Asher's brow instantly nodded. He muttered under his breath. Yeah. There aren't many people this shameless. Charles was fighting hard not to crack up. No worries. Maverick won't be smiling for long. Gabriel gave a non-committal nod. He'd woken early this morning, had seen the surprise firsthand. They chatted a bit more before Harper and Isabella appeared, makeup done, walking out together. With everyone finally here, the director pumped his fist and raised his megaphone. We managed to reach her last night. She's flown in specifically because one of our guests is celebrating a birthday. She's here to deliver his birthday wishes. Now, give it up for our mystery guest. The guests all exchanged puzzled looks. Who's having a birthday? Asher asked. Charles was already zeroing in on Maverick, eyes gleaming with amusement. Gabriel and Edwin had both turned toward him too. When Henry followed suit, the others finally looked in that direction as well. Maverick was still murmuring to Caleb, shoulder pressed against his, heads nearly touching, like they were sharing some secret, but it was all just a show. Caleb's spirit had already left his body. He wasn't hearing a word, and Maverick was the only one doing all the talking, buzzing in Caleb's ear like an insistent mosquito. Then suddenly, a voice cut through the air. Maverick, you're ruthless. Just got out of a breakup and already hitting on someone. Maverick's face went pale. He snapped back. What are you talking about? I was just, in that split second, a whole cake came flying and landed square on Maverick's face with a loud slap. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Charles doubled over, howling with laughter. Well, Maverick, you're totally screwed now. Chapter 46. Flirting with trouble. 1 second, everything changed. Harper and Isabella, who were close by, didn't react in time, let alone Caleb, who was still lost in thought. It wasn't until the stranger beside him started rubbing the cake base all over Maverick's face that he finally snapped out of it. Maverick flailed wildly, trying to get free, and Caleb jumped back fast, putting some distance between himself and the two. Before he could even ask what was going on, Owen and Henry stepped in and pulled him away together. What? Caleb stammered, his voice tight with shock. Henry whispered, "Keep quiet, we'll just watch from a distance." Caleb blinked, stunned, his gaze flickering to Henry like he'd never seen him before. He'd worked with Henry before, thought he knew him. The guy wasn't exactly a saint, but he was usually the first to jump in and help. So why was he now telling Caleb to stay out of it? To just watch. Was this even the same Henry he knew? And wasn't this supposed to be a reality show? Didn't anyone have the power to stop it? Caleb snapped his head up, scanning the crew for help. A production assistant took a hesitant step forward, then froze. Before he could take another, the producer suddenly lunged from the side and yanked him back hard. The assistant said something, voice rising. "This is a family matter." The producer snapped. "We don't get involved. Stay out of it." Without another word, he dragged the assistant away. Caleb stared, utterly lost. He glanced around again, this time at the other guests, and then he froze once more. Not far off, Charles was practically glowing with excitement, eyes wide as he watched. A tiny gasp escaped him. "There's no candle in that cake, right? Not because I care about the guy. I just don't want him showing up looking like a wreck and suddenly claiming moral high ground during divorce talks. That'd be messy." Edwin and Gabriel burst out laughing at that. Even if their asterisk were asterisk a candle, it wouldn't scar him. Probably just give Maverick a funny nose job. Asher laughed so hard he collapsed to the ground, shoulders shaking in quiet fits, one hand clamped over his mouth. Harper and Isabella were more restrained. Still, their faces were unmistakably lit up with amusement. The guests were all there, but clearly no one had any intention of stepping in to help. Caleb's mind was a complete mess. So what the hell had happened while he'd been zoned out? 1 second, a stranger shows up and slams cake right in Maverick's face. Could someone please explain what the hell is going on? Too bad. Among the guests, only Charles, Gabriel, and Edwin knew who the woman was. The rest were just as clueless. But honestly, who she was didn't matter. What mattered was that she stood right there, smeared cake all over Maverick's face, and dropped a line with layers of meaning. What did that say? It meant the gossip train was about to roll. And hard. The guests' inner gossip demons were already on fire. They weren't going to stop it. Not when a good scandal was right there in front of them. What if they actually stopped her? Then she'd calm down, and what would be left to eat? By now, Maverick had finally snapped back into reality. He shoved at the woman in front of him. "Who the hell are you? Are you even sane? Sane? Oh, I'm plenty crazy. If I weren't, would I have married a dumbass like you?" Her voice boomed, face twisted with fury. "Married?" Caleb finally caught up. "So this is Maverick's wife?" Charles nodded quickly. "Yes, this is Maverick's secret wife, Ella. They've been married for 3 years. Caleb finally snapped out of it. Maverick froze at the sound. Familiar, too familiar. His struggle faltered. "Ella? How did you get here?" Ella finally stopped. Her lips curled coldly. "You finally remember you even have a wife. Playing the field while married, Maverick. Do you even care about face anymore? She let go. The cake on Maverick's face crashed straight down onto the floor. Charles looked closer and burst out laughing. There was actually a tiny piece of candle stuck up his nose. Everyone else couldn't help but chuckle too. It wasn't that they were being cruel. Maverick just looked so ridiculous and flustered right now. His whole face was smeared with thick frosting. Even his hair was splattered in colorful cream. He couldn't even open his eyes, and there was a half-burnt candle jammed up his nose. Who could possibly hold back a laugh at that? Maverick, meanwhile, was still dazed. He hadn't even figured out how Ella ended up here. Then suddenly remembered they were still live on camera. What had she just said? She'd claimed they were married, and that he was out chasing other women. Maverick's vision went black. He felt like passing out, but he couldn't pass out. He had to get himself together fast. He took a deep breath, stood up, and wiped his face hard. At last, he could see clearly, and that's when he locked eyes with Ella's furious glare. Maverick snapped, "What the hell are you doing? Don't you know we're still on air?" Ella was half a head shorter than Maverick, but her presence didn't waver. She smirked at his outburst. "Of course I know you're live. Didn't I come here to give you birthday wishes?" Birthday wishes? From her? She was clearly just here to stir up trouble. Maverick was furious. He couldn't scream at her in front of the camera, so he turned and stormed off, trying hard to keep his temper. Ella wasn't about to let him walk away. She grabbed his arm, yanking him off balance. Maverick instinctively tried to pull free, but couldn't break loose. His anger flared instantly. "Let go of me." Ella's eyes flickered with surprise, then quickly filled with disappointment. 3 years ago, you weren't like this." Charles smirked. Could Ella really be implying Maverick's worse off now than he was 3 years ago? That thought was a bit far-fetched, wasn't it? Edwin glanced at Charles, about to say that maybe Ella was just disappointed in how Maverick treated her now. Then he heard Ella call out, "Maverick! How many women have you been with these past 3 years? Look at you. Worn down, weak as a shadow. Can't even pull away from my hand." The other guests burst into laughter, doubling over. Maverick's wife was openly calling out his messy private life in front of the live stream audience, crew, and all the guests, claiming it had left him run down and weak, barely able to hold her hand. Is this really okay? Isn't she going a bit too far? Don't the producers even care? The director and producer in the monitor room exchanged uneasy glances. "Any data on the stream?" the director whispered. The producer shot back, fired up, "We're almost hitting last night's peak viewership." The director's eyes lit up. "Then keep an eye on it. Try not to let too many risky words slip through and get us shut down. Better have a few backup streams ready." "Hey, you!" the producer snapped at the assistant director. "What are you waiting for? Go." After everything from last episode, they'd learned their lesson. This kind of buzz was too good to miss. The crew had definitely grown since the storm last time. Honestly, if the audience loves it and they need the buzz, why not give them what they want? It's a win-win. Why would their show stop it? Wait, what? You saying they're not a travel show? They are a travel show. Aren't we still on the grasslands? It's just about watching guests argue and spill tea. Then off they go to explore. The director and producer were still glued to the screen. Maverick's face was covered in cake frosting, but even so, it was clear from his expression. He was furious. Maverick's voice shot up. "Ella, how long are you going to keep lying? When did I ever fake it? You don't even know if you're lying?" Ella laughed bitterly, stepping back from the mess of cake on Maverick's face. "If you weren't guilty, why can't you break free? Come on. Tell me you're not scared of a woman now." "You, me." Maverick's chest heaved with rage. "When have I ever hit you? Don't go making stuff up." "Yeah." Ella nodded calmly. "You were kind of weak back then, now you're even worse. Honestly, marrying you 3 years ago was the dumbest thing I ever did." Charles suddenly remembered something and quietly opened his notes, scanning through a few lines before breaking into a smirk. "That explains it. No wonder Ella's so strong. Her family runs a taekwondo studio, and she actually won city championships. Back when Maverick first started out, Ella bankrolled him, handled everything. She was his manager, personal assistant, even played mom and dad to him. And what happened? He cheated on her in the first year of marriage. Real piece of work." Gabriel and Edwin both frowned, reacting instinctively. Maverick's a total waste of space. Right here, Ella took a deep breath, as if steadying herself. "I don't want to waste time with small talk. Let's get this out in the open. Right now." Maverick was losing it. What's there to say here? Exactly? Can they really do this? Talk about their whole mess in front of all these people? No way, I can't let her keep going. Good thing she's only mentioned the marriage so far. This mess could still be cleaned up afterward. But if Ella starts spilling everything else, the real problem, he didn't even know what she knew. Last night, he'd barely gotten her to calm down, and she'd promised to wait until after the show to talk properly. And now, she just shows up at the studio like this? Whatever she says, if it gets out, his career's done for. After a heartbeat of clarity, Maverick snapped back into control. He inhaled deeply and said to Ella, calm but firm, "Okay, I'll listen. Let's get this out in the open. But can I at least go wash my face first? Then we can talk properly." He took a step forward, reaching out like he used to back when they were first dating, just teasing her by pinching her cheek. Ella was tough on the outside but soft underneath. If he made the move first, she'd, before his fingers even brushed her face. There came a sharp crack. The whole set erupted into screams. Maverick's wail was like a pig being slaughtered. "My hand. It's broken. I know it is. It hurts so bad. Ella, let go." Ella's eyes burned with disgust. She kicked him hard in the knee and snapped, "Don't you dare touch me with your filthy hands." Charles clenched his eyes shut, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. "Can't take it anymore. I don't want to fill my mind with that stuff. Stop it." His brain was already spiraling out of control. Gabriel winced, pressing a hand to his temple. Imagination really has a mind of its own. Ella yanked her arm free and, seeing Maverick still howling like a banshee, spun around, grabbed an apple from the table, and shoved it right into his mouth, silencing him in one swift move. "Wow, sis-in-law, you've got real moves." Asher didn't lower his voice. Ella heard every word. She flashed a sheepish grin and said, "Sorry if I'm interrupting, but I just couldn't help it. I watched your live stream yesterday too. That jerk's been anything but honest. Did he bother you at all?" Asher waved both hands quickly. "Nope, no problem. I'm not bothered at all." He paused, then added, "You two sort things out however you need to. Won't affect our shoot, right?" He directed the last line straight at Gabriel. Gabriel nodded. "Besides, this show's already gone off the rails. Might as well let it run its course." As he spoke, Gabriel glanced over at the camera nearby. "Good. Still rolling." Ella exhaled in relief. She'd been waiting for that. She smiled quickly. "You don't have to worry. I won't take up much of your time. I've got all the evidence I need. I just want to face him down, one-on-one. That's just how she is. Can't keep anything in." And she'd given Maverick more than one chance. He knew full well she'd caught him cheating, yet still didn't pull back on camera. Not the slightest respect for her as his wife. So she came straight to the set. If it was over between them anyway, she wasn't gonna sit quiet while he'd made her feel like a fool and a doormat for years. Let him taste a bit of his own medicine. She looked down. Maverick had already spit out the apple, now clutching his hand and grimacing in pain. "Cut the act," she said flatly. "I know what I'm doing. Didn't actually break anything. No need to play up for everyone's time. Let's talk about Jonathan first." She slid into the chair across from Maverick, hands on hips, her glare sharper than before. Charles's eyes lit up the moment he heard that name. "Jonathan? That's the college guy Maverick was looking for, right?" Maverick went rigid, suddenly forgetting his hand pain. He stared at Ella, stunned. "How? He's already told me everything he knows," Ella said, pulling out a voice recorder from her bag and flipping open a notebook with a pen. "Now it's your turn." Maverick was completely speechless. What was she even talking about? Make a public confession about cheating in front of all these people? Was he losing it? Or was Ella? The other guests were wide-eyed. Seriously? That direct? Just start confessing on the spot? Ella really doesn't see them as outsiders at all. But everyone was actually pretty thrilled. Henry had somehow slipped to Charles's side, that familiar smirk on his face. "Looks like the frogman's finally done for. You knew about this last night, didn't you?" Charles was about to nod when he caught Henry's next line, and quickly played dumb. "What? I had no idea. I didn't know Maverick was hooking up with Jonathan a year ago, not even that he was being financed by some rich guy. Anyway, just felt annoyed and needed someone to unwind with, and this Jonathan, he's all about the money." When Ella came along offering more cash and way bigger favors, he didn't hesitate to spill everything. Plus, let's be real, Jonathan's not dumb. He might have missed that Maverick was married, but he knew full well Maverick was a public figure. If things ever blew up later, he'd need an exit plan. So yeah, He kept the recording of Maverick saying he wanted to keep him all along. That tape's probably in Ella's hands right now, isn't it? Edwin finally got it. So Ella already has the proof and is confronting Maverick. Maybe she's using this info gap to see just how much more he'll reveal? Henry waited quietly for a few seconds, didn't get Charles' reply, and didn't mind. He simply kept watching the scene with full attention. Maverick sat on the ground, his head buzzing. He hadn't expected Ella to know about Jonathan at all. What about the others? Maverick suddenly couldn't bear to think further. If Ella found Jonathan, she's already found the rest. No wonder she was so fired up last night when she said she wanted a divorce. No way, can't let Ella set the pace. Still live on camera, with all these viewers and fans watching. If he admits it now, his life's over for good. Even if it were Joe. You're not saying anything, huh? Ella waited a few seconds without getting a reply, her patience wearing thin. Fine, let's drop Jonathan for now. How about Julian? The moment Julian was mentioned, the production crew nearby erupted in whispers. Julian, you're kidding, right? Staff chatter was kept low, but in the quiet studio, it still cut through. Caleb suddenly spoke up. Isn't Julian the biggest investor in Blooming Garden *? Blooming Garden was Maverick's massive hit series from just a few weeks ago. The whole room went wild. Henry saw Caleb finally speak up and leaned in, all smiles like he couldn't resist a good show. Looks like Caleb's finally climbed out of that breakup slump. No way, wasn't just my imagination after all. The Henry the first knew before must have been a total fake. Henry really knows how to open the wrong damn can. But Julian didn't just hand Maverick Blooming Garden right? After he and Ella married 6 months ago, he started working with Julian straight after. Any projects since then were probably all Julian's doing. Julian treated Maverick like a king. Imagine what had happened if Julian found out his little lover was secretly married and had been keeping other mistresses on the side. Charles just smiled, silent. Edwin glanced at the camera, no big deal. Julian was already going to find out one way or another. It's been long enough. Should have hit the trending list by now, right? Now it makes sense. Asher said, eyes lighting up. I remember this show was an S+ production, wasn't it? Not that he doubted Maverick's past clout, but honestly, his old name just didn't cut it. Ella nodded along. Yeah, S+ level production. Wasn't sure why the director even picked Maverick. Because it wasn't the director who wanted him. Charles let out a laugh, full of glee. If Maverick weren't still covered in cake, his face would have been priceless right now. He just sat there on the grass, stunned, mind completely blank. Why was Ella sitting here, dead serious, talking like this? Didn't she care about her career anymore? She'd barely started building hers. He took a deal with a backer. He betrayed Ella. But Ella can't just ruin him like this. Everyone else is still here watching the show, laughing at him. Maverick felt like he was on fire from the inside. Every nerve screaming. He couldn't hold it in anymore. His voice cracked with desperation. Ella, is this even enough? What did I ever do to you? Why are you tearing me apart in front of everyone? And the cameras? Can't admit it, not even a chance. No matter what Ella said, Maverick couldn't admit anything. If he didn't say yes, there was still hope, but if he nodded right here, in front of the lens, and admitted it, that would be the end. So even though Maverick's mind was racing with panic, he had to stay cool. Ella let out a cold laugh at his words. What did I slander you for? Want proof? I'll show it right now. You brave enough to look. Maverick turned pale. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. After a long silence, he muttered, all lies. You're just setting me up. It's only because we had that fight the other week, right? But haven't I treated you well enough? I gave you half of my last paycheck. Ella snapped. Maverick! Shut up. How dare you bring money into this in front of me? If it hadn't been for me marrying you, using my family's money to get you started in the industry, how would you have even gotten your foot in the door so smoothly at first? How much did I pour into you? Don't tell me you don't know how much. And your paycheck? I'm your legally married wife. Our marriage is recognized by law. Your earnings were ours to begin with. Taking them from you was never a choice. It was just fair. Maverick shot back. It was fair. I gave it all back, didn't I? So what's your problem? Just because you cheated on me with a sugar daddy and 4 lovers, then came out the other side like nothing happened? Ella cut him off cold. The other guests all widened their eyes. Four. Charles paused, processing the plot. These are just the ones still going. If you count the past ones, it'd fill 2 mahjong tables. Gabriel covered his mouth with his fist. Edwin's eyes widened in shock. Ella! Maverick snapped, his face flushed with anger. So this is why you came here today? To ruin me? After everything I've done for you? For me? Ella shot back, her voice sharp with fury. You call that taking care of me? 2 years of knowing each other, 3 years married, 3 years of living off my money while you did nothing, then 2 more years using shady schemes to make cash, and finally giving it all back to me? That's your idea of being good to someone. The words hung in the air. Silence fell over the room. Only Charles gave Ella a slow, approving thumbs up. Way to go!